I want you to take a look at this unfinished graph. The top line is the data for women from 1998 to 2022, and the bottom line is the data for men from the same time period. Without explaining anything more, could you guess what this graph represents? I'll give you a second to think about it. If you guessed that this graph shows the difference between how many times men and women piss while sitting down per day, you're wrong. It actually shows the percentage of men and women between the ages of 19 to 28 who identify as liberal. For almost 2 decades, these numbers remained relatively stable, with about 30% of both men and women identifying as liberal. But around 2015, that started to change drastically. I think this graph is the perfect visual representation of not only the growing disparity of political ideologies between men and women, but the overall disagreeableness between men and women in modern society as well. While I am definitely no gender studies expert, I am something that a small demographic of the internet deems important. A random guy online with an opinion. So let me bring up my main quarrels with the current online gender war that is now slowly seeping its way into reality, and what I think we should do moving forward. How does one accurately define their role in society? For the past 1,000 years or so, ever since large-scale civilization spawned, the answer to this question has relatively remained the same, at least for most societies. Men are the providers. They get the high-paying jobs, do the difficult physical work, and make sure their family is safe. Women, on the other hand, nurture. They usually only stay at home, care for the kids, and do all the other stuff we traditionally associated with what women should do. But now, those distinctions have gotten pretty confusing. The laws that were put into place to prevent women from reaching the same sort of financial security without needing a husband to do the working for them are virtually non-existent. The amount of jobs that don't require intense physical labor and the value of these jobs has also skyrocketed as well, such as jobs in the tech industry. And as a result, women can choose to be single, own a house, and make just as much, if not more money than if they were to have a partner. This has given women far more power and influence over their own lives as well as the society that they're in. And I believe that this is the root cause of all the problems we're now seeing sprout up between men and women. That can sound like I'm saying that women having more autonomy over their lives is a bad thing, so before you put words in my mouth, let me just clear up that that's not what I'm saying at all. I need to continue explaining. If you ask any young man what being a man means, the answer is not going to be as straight cut as it once was, and a large part of the reason as to why this is because there has been a pushback on traditional masculinity. With less father figures in real life, more time spent online, and loads of information on why masculinity is damaging to both men and women, young men just don't know how they're supposed to act, especially when it comes to interacting with women. A lot of the social importance has been heavily favored towards empowering women in recent years, and it's left a lot of dudes feeling like they are underappreciated or undervalued for what they do. Neither gender is exclusively at fault here. On the one hand, you have a lot of men within red pill spaces pushing the narrative that marriage and getting into a serious relationship with just one woman is not worth it anymore, that modern women are delusional, and that marriage is heavily skewed in a woman's favor, so this deters young men from pursuing the traditional part of masculinity related to being a provider for a family. And I know that a lot of these red pill guys are not intentionally trying to demotivate you, but when you tell men that they should just say screw it to marriage and do all the work that they're doing for themselves and for themselves only, I think this leaves a lot of guys feeling empty, like all their work is for nothing. Because in the end, it won't even be appreciated. These types of narratives pushed by hardcore red pillars also completely skew the perception of how women think and act, but we'll get to that later in the video. Then, on the other hand, we have all of these large media sources giving positive masculinity no attention and trying to empower women and have them be more represented as working class citizens who are capable of just as much as men are. Which, side note, I don't think is a bad thing on its own, but then we also have women spreading the idea that men are not needed anymore, and if you really do want a man, then you should wait for the absolute perfect one to come into your life. So it's this really destructive cycle of men feeling like they have no reason to improve, which makes the quality of great men who qualify for relationships decrease, and on top of that, women are raising their standards for what they will tolerate with a man because they now have the power to do so, but simultaneously wonder why there aren't more men who fit the bill, not realizing that it's this I don't need a man mentality that leads to there being less great men in the first place. And the men who are now not fitting the bill, who in the past might have had a much greater chance of finding a relationship or a marriage with a woman because she needed to get married to get her basic needs met, are outraged with this new way of living.
The more that women embrace the choice we have and who we want as a partner, the more it terrifies the males who fear they won't be chosen. Just follow me here, okay? The more that women exercise their right to choose the kind of partner they want, or if they even want a partner at all, the more it terrifies the males who know they don't fit the bill physically, socially, and or financially. Because most males, I would argue, are mediocre and are lacking a lot of important qualities you need to have a successful partnership. But back in the day, baby, that did not matter. Mediocre males were still being chosen out of our need to survive. Now that we are in a time where we no longer need males for us to meet our basic needs of survival, mediocre males are being left behind in droves.
I'm not gonna lie, this woman is spitting some truth here, and the usual resort for men who no longer meet that standard is to sadly turn to the red pill and the manosphere and take out all their frustrations by calling women hypergamous hoes. But there's a comment I want to bring up underneath this video that will lead us to the next place I want to go with this. This woman said, "Gonna be a whole lot more single, lonely men in our future, but they brought that on themselves." Did they really bring that on themselves though? Did young men create the society we currently live in, or was that past older generations? Fact of the matter is, the young men that are actually being punished for this had absolutely no say in the matter and did not benefit from society being the way it was in previous generations. And this is a massive problem I see with both genders. There's a complete lack of empathy when either side tries to make a valid criticism about the opposite sex. Here's a crazy fact. 55% of single men aged 18 to 30 say they haven't approached a woman in the past year. But 77% of women aged 18 to 30 say they wished they were approached more, and 86% of women say they want the man to make the first move. Seems like exclusively a male problem, right? Why don't men just approach more then? Well, problem is, 82% of women reported experiencing creepy behavior sometimes, often, or constantly, and 50% of men report not wanting to approach women for fear of being seen as creepy or predatory. As podcaster and friend Chris Williamson put it, women face a dilemma. They are scared for their safety, but also have a preference for men making the first move. Men face a dilemma. They are terrified of being seen as creepy, but also know that if they don't approach a woman, the conversation is unlikely to start. But I believe a big reason that wasn't brought up as to why men are now more afraid to approach women is because of what I stated earlier, that demonization of masculinity, and particularly being assertive when you are trying to approach a woman and you're trying to get a date. The odds of a false allegation ruining your life and having the entire world see is much greater thanks to the internet. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that more men getting exposed is doing only harm, because obviously it's not. These men who may have gotten away scot-free in the past, who are terribly abusive and assault women, are now getting exposed for who they truly are. And that's awesome. But the line between being creepy and harassing a woman, or simply just flirting with her and trying to get her number, is a bit more confusing now due to the fact that so many men have been falsely accused of harassment or assault and have had their entire lives ruined. The last data point I left out from the earlier findings is that 17% of Americans aged 18 to 29 believe that a man inviting a woman out for a drink always or usually constitutes SA. That is a pretty significant number. Oftentimes, the same women who are bashing men for being so docile, insecure, and weird are the same ones who wish they got approached more, not realizing that the media has portrayed men approaching women in a very bad light in recent years. But once again, it's not like men are innocent. For one, yeah, women are scary. I get it. But you can be ahead of 55% of men if you simply just go up to a woman and actually ask her out on a date. 55% of men aren't willing to do that or haven't done that. There's one more real example I want to use to highlight the lack of sympathy between both genders. This dude made a reel about not wanting to pursue a 10 out of 10 looking woman because they look too expensive and he knew they would be too much work. And besides the reel in and of itself that you could easily generate an opinion on, the comments below are just men and women non-stop back and forth roasting each other, with women saying men need to know their place and stop being broke, and dudes attacking the physical appearance of all the women in the comments who have anything to say about it. Absolutely nothing was gained from this post, and it only made a bunch of men and women mad at each other for not meeting each other's expectations. You know what these people probably need more than anything? Therapy. and maybe online therapy using today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Relationships with the opposite sex are very tricky, especially when you don't have help from a professional outside of you. And I know in my past experience, I've used therapy, and it has helped a lot with kind of clearing up my mind regarding relationships with women. And with BetterHelp, it makes therapy a lot easier to get into and less intimidating for many people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, a video chat, or even messaging, whatever's the most comfortable version of therapy for you. All you do is fill out a questionnaire that will ask you questions about what challenges you're going through and what kind of therapist you like, and then they will match you to one of their over 30,000 therapists in their network based on your needs, preferences, and location. You'll be matched with a therapist in most cases within 48 hours, and the great part about BetterHelp that sets it from therapy in person is that because they have such a big network of therapists, if you find you aren't vibing with your therapist, they aren't helping you, it is free and easy to switch your therapist at any time. So you can join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live a happier, healthier life if you go to my link, betterhelp.com/Cole, that is betterhelp.com/Cole, and you're gonna get 10% off your first month of therapy if you use that link. Now let's talk about the absolutely ludicrous expectations that both men and women have for the opposite gender. I'd like to ask all of the young hetero people watching this video a question. How much of your time spent in a day consuming conversations of the opposite sex is from the internet, and how much of your conversations with the opposite sex are from real life? I can only imagine that for a lot of you, at least half of your social interaction is coming from social media. And here I am about to go over something that needs to be brought up once again. For men, in terms of how the online world influences their perception of women, I've noticed that there's two opposing sides to it. First, there's this rabbit hole of only a certain type of woman highlighted on social media that they get sucked into. Like I shared earlier, because many young men don't have any sort of father figure or role model in their lives, and at the same time are being taught that their masculine traits are wrong, they usually get sucked into the men who stand out the most when it comes to fighting back against these sorts of ideas. And the men who stand out the most, due to the fact that they post the most controversial, polarizing takes, are usually the red pill content creators. There are obviously big issues with this. The only type of women you will usually see on their podcasts are the ones who are either uneducated, have an OnlyFans they're trying to promote, or both. And this creates the idea in young, impressionable guys' mind that this must be how most women are thinking and acting.
Ladies, please name 3 countries. We haven't done this one in a while. We'll start right here with Miss Red.
Africa, Tennessee.
Tennessee?
I don't know.
That's a state.
They bring on these types of women specifically because, number one, it's easier for the host to gain control over the conversation and dominate the podcast without a strong rebuttal. And two, these types of women usually have the most polarizing takes, like I was talking about earlier, and that makes for good entertainment. Have you seen what happens when a woman with good critical thinking skills who's not afraid to speak up for themselves actually makes it on one of these shows? I'll show you.
If you have only one place in your heart for one woman, or you want to have one woman in your heart, I think you said, why don't you just commit to one and choose to be faithful to her?
I'm just not wired that way. I spent my whole 20s trying to fix myself. Thought something was
You're a man
wrong
of
with
self-control. You work out, you do business.
Yeah.
You can possess your own power and direct it the way you want to direct it.
It's just not how I am. It's not how I am.
You think that might be a limited mindset?
I think it's none of your business, but I don't want you to think I'm triggered by you. I'm not.
Okay.
I saw somebody say that, and I think that's interesting. I think you're annoying, but I'm not triggered. You know what I'm saying? No, you are. You're annoying in like this goody two-shoes type way, and that's fine.
This dude just completely projected, and her answer obviously made him a little insecure. I bet she doesn't get invited back to one of these podcasts again. And then there's all these viral clips of garbage street interviews that, again, only highlight very promiscuous, unfaithful women.
I'm single as of yesterday.
So you had a man before yesterday?
For 2 years. I'm not gonna lie, I got a appointment coming.
With who?
My best friend.
You were friends with this guy while you were dating your boyfriend?
I've been friends with him before I knew my ex, I guess now.
This is the type of shit that men are getting fed. Ridiculous. Then on the other opposing side, as to how social media has influenced men's perception of women, is the completely unrealistic standards they have for women and how attractive they should be, at least physically. Remember that reel I showed you about the dude not trying to entertain a 10 out of 10? Well, there are plenty of conventionally, objectively attractive women in the comments, and a bunch of dudes replying to their comments saying, "You're a 4 out of 10 anyways, and you have to wear tons of makeup," when the woman is completely out of their league. Now, they could actually think that woman is very attractive, and they're just saying that in order to appear cool in the comments to other men, but I genuinely think that a lot of these guys think women are supposed to look the way they do when they put on Snapchat filters and Instagram filters. Hell, I just saw a dude on Twitter talk about how Sydney Sweeney was a 5.5 out of 10 in Europe and a 3 out of 10 not even noticeable on the metro in Russia. I don't know how true that is, but are you guys serious with these standards and what you think you can get? I see loads of dudes online commenting stuff like, "At this point, with the way that the dating market is, I would take a girl who looks like a dumpster." But your dumpster is a woman with an insane body and a stunning face. You're ridding yourself of the opportunity of meeting a genuinely amazing woman because your standards are built on TikTok and Instagram models, and you only focus on physical appearance. It's crazy, but luckily, from what I've seen, this really only applies to chronically online men. Now, as for women and their expectations, we already know where this goes. Dating apps are 80% men, 20% women, and this is how the majority of young people meet now. 20% of women can choose from the very top percentage attractiveness of these dating apps as a result. Women can make their own money and be their own person without a man, and therefore what you need to be doing as a man for a lot of women is to be truly exceptional in all aspects of life. The fact of the matter is, unlike chronically online men who have these really high expectations that aren't at all congruent with their own charm and charisma, most women actually do have the option to choose the best option. It's pretty congruent with the death of the middle class in America, like the rich get richer, poor get poorer concept, which is happening. A lot of men, as an argument, like to say, "Oh, if you keep up these standards, you're gonna be single when you're 40, and you're gonna be wondering where have all the good men gone, and you're gonna wish that you never held out that long." But I honestly think that, yes, some of these women are gonna wish that they didn't hold out for this perfect man that may have never existed or that may not be at the same standards as they think they are, but a lot of these women are not going to care that they're single. And that's partly due to the fact that they're being fed the narrative that men aren't needed anymore, and like we saw earlier, that infuriates men who don't fit that standard. But, like I stated, a lot of this stuff only exists on the internet, at least for now. It's actually wild to me how many below average looking dudes I walk by on a daily basis who have girlfriends simply because they have something going for them, they're friendly, romantic, and confident, and they actually approach women in real life. And that leads me to ask, how do we stop the never-ending, constant battle between men and women that is now only amplified in the digital age? Well, I don't know, I'm just some random guy on the internet, but maybe we can start with realizing that both men and women struggle. Both men and women have issues and double standards they have to deal with, and maybe if we hold ourselves to high but realistic standards, then we can stop feeling such a disconnect between each other. Men and women will always be different in the way each of us function and what makes us happy in both platonic and romantic relationships. And if you don't understand this difference and know how to calmly communicate it in a way where you're not just projecting, getting defensive, angry, and just personally attacking someone, that's when actual progress in understanding one another is made. To me, that starts with encouraging proper parenting. Having a 2-parent household lowers the risk of poverty, prison, and increases the rate of pursuing a higher education. But it also means that your son or daughter has the opportunity to get perspectives from both a man and a woman's side. The future of society will be shaped by the people that children look up to, and ideally those people for men wouldn't be the people that are being pushed out by the manosphere, and for women wouldn't be, I don't know, what's the female equivalent of the manosphere? Women who say men are useless and trash? Yeah. Basically any sort of role model that lacks respect for the opposite gender and speaks badly of them because they don't realize that they're projecting their past experiences with shitty men or women onto others. Please stop with this whole men are trash, women are trash narrative. Men and women have their own unique strengths and weaknesses, and maybe you don't want to admit it, but we do need each other. And that needing each other should come from a place where we should be treated equally, where it makes sense to be treated equally and not push this narrative that femininity is toxic or masculinity is toxic. Because both masculine and feminine energies, when people actually do the work to heal and have a high emotional IQ, are beautiful expressions of life. Men, instead of roasting and constantly bashing a dude for having emotions or being down bad or spending a ton of time online complaining about the standards of women while not actually doing anything to change yourself, let's start directing our energy towards lifting each other up. Men's education and drive and purpose is at what seems to be an all-time low, and although women have raised their standards and are really holding out for that exceptional man, it is much easier to stand out now and be that exceptional man if you have a purpose that you're working towards and you're really working on yourself. A lot of y'all men are really convinced, thanks to the internet, that if you ask a girl out, she's gonna consider you a sex offender or something like that. But what I see in real life 95% of the time, if you are asking her out, like, they're not gonna think you're creepy. And please stop taking advice on how to treat women from the guy who has never had a successful marriage and treats women like dispensable objects. Now women, realize that men being men and being strong and secure in their masculine energy does not at all take away from the power that you have. More healthy outlets for men to be men need to be pushed by not only other men on the internet, but women as well. The issues that men are having right now are very real, and much of the media is against masculinity. So just like how strong men will listen to you and listen to your issues, you should be open and receptive to listening and understanding what men are trying to say right now. And to both men and women, stop getting your perception of how men and women are based on how you see men and women online. And stop assuming the worst when you do interact with men or women in real life just because of what you saw online. Before consuming a piece of media and getting mad at it, ask yourself, is this accurately portraying how experiences between men and women go every day in real life? And are these conversations generating ideas that will contribute to the positive cooperation of men and women in a postmodern world where gender roles are less defined? You can usually find the answers to these questions based on the ratio of healthy to destructive conversations that are happening in the comments section. But what all of these solutions come from is having more accountability, more understanding, and more inner work being done from both sides. There are plenty of incredible men and women that are pushing positive, healthy versions of masculinity and femininity, but the problem is their voices rarely get amplified because they aren't generating a ton of engagement. So if you ever see that, please like and share the shit out of it. Heal from whatever man or woman did you wrong, and if you want to be understood, try to first understand why the other side has the thoughts and feelings that they do. Now, you're still gonna meet plenty of insecure, unwilling to understand men or women when you try to do this, and that's fine. The real problem arises when you let that grow anger, hatred, or annoyance within you. So I haven't announced this on video yet, but I've actually created a free self-improvement community for both men and women, or whatever you identify as, and that is one of the first links in my description below. If you want to join a free self-improvement community and have meaningful conversations where people are open-minded and are actually generating positive, beneficial discussions, then check that link in my description and yeah, join that free community. It's fun. I'm so excited to see all of the irony in the comments. I'm sure it's going to be really civil down there. Maybe you want to go check it out, grab some popcorn. But if you want to watch another video like this one where I talk about the masculinity crisis in more detail, check out this video right here. And I'm heading out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I love you guys. Peace.